So I've got Rumble up. We're live on Rumble.
Well,
And
if you are having a little bit of feedback, you may want to put yours on like voice isolation or something.
who is that?
Not sure which one.
That's Marcia. Martha, sorry.
What is the matter?
Do you know how to do voice isolation on your phone?
I don't.
Okay. I'll try and talk you through it.
Should I?
No, it's easy. It's really easy. I assume you're on an iPhone?
I am.
Okay, great. Just take your finger and swipe down.
Swipe down?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
At the very top, there should be like a microphone.
Okay, hold on.
No, you have to swipe from the right-hand corner, Bridget.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know.
If you put your finger at the very top of your phone in the right-hand corner and just pull down into the screen, a whole bunch of little circles come up.
The 3 circles up at the top?
If you go...
I'm sorry. I am so computer illiterate. You have no idea.
Okay, so listen. If you go to the top right corner of your phone and put your finger on the edge of the phone, then swipe down towards the middle of your phone, catty corner to the other corner.
It takes me to my front screen.
So the screen that comes up should have a oblong circle that says focus with a moon on it.
No, I don't have that. And in fact, I just don't have it. I don't know where this is coming from, but I know I don't have it.
Okay.
It's no biggie. It's no biggie. It's not.
Maybe I'm downstairs in the family room. Maybe I'll go upstairs and maybe I'll have some better reception.
It sounds good. Yeah, it sounds good about 90% of the time. There's just a little bit of feedback.
Okay, well, I'm going to try up there. Anyway.
So would you introduce yourself to everybody and tell them a little bit about your background and how you guys came to live in Nevada?
Oh, yes, I will. Hold on. I'm going up the stairs right now. Okay. It all started with my great-grandfather, who was an Irish immigrant. And he was working in Pioche, Nevada in 1889. And some guy came in, excuse me, I really had a bad cold. Some guy came in with the highest grade of silver he had ever seen. And he asked him where it was, where he got it. And the guy told him, meet me on the Dry Lake and I'll show you. So that's what he did. He went down there. Oh, excuse me. He went to the dry lake, but the guy never showed. And so he had to water his horses. And when he went up the hill, there was old workings there. He watered his horses, stayed, opened up all these different claims, and went back to town. That is how we got Groom Mine. And it's basically been in our family ever since. There were original patents that they acquired, which are actually beautiful. You want to talk about a piece of art. It's the way America was supposed to be. You're granted your land forever, the exclusive right to occupancy. It names everything. You get all the water, all the rights of way, everything. And that's how America used to be.
So,
but anyway.
So Marcia, hold on, or Martha, sorry, I keep calling you Marcia. The Groom, Groom mine was basically your great, is it your great grandfather?
Yes.
Okay. He acquired the mine to include perpetual ownership of it through patents
Yes. Forever.
forever.
And the word forever is in the patents.
Okay, keep going.
And so he was a very, very busy guy. He set up mills and smelters all around the West. So he was in and out. He had partners, and he didn't really do a whole lot with the mine. There were some people who were partners with him that actually did some work in 1915, 16, and 17. And they took out about, in today's money, it would probably be about 25 million. But he went around running gold mines and that all over the West. But at any rate, he passed the mine down to my grandfather when my grandfather got married. My grandmother was living at a mine about 25 miles away. And he said that they were going to town to get her tooth fixed, but they actually went to town and got married. And the Irish way was when the oldest son married, he was in charge. And so the mine became his. Now, he still had 5 younger brothers and sisters and still worked with his father. But he was a very brilliant man. He had to go to Canada and work when nobody had any money during the Great Depression. And so he went all over the place. My dad stayed with my great grandfather for 2 years. Him and his brother did, while their parents were trying to make a living. And through that course of time, my grandfather worked for a place called International Mining Corporation. And he interested them in coming out to the mine and paying to build a smelter.
Now, was silver the only thing that they were mining?
The smelter.
Was silver the only thing that they were mining out of there?
No, they were mostly mining lead.
Okay.
But they had everything. There was silver, there's gold, there's every kind of mineral that you can imagine is out there.
Okay.
It's uranium, all of it.
Okay.
But it was a huge deposit of galena, and that is lead and silver combined. Very beautiful ore.
Okay.
And that's what they were mining then. That was where the money was at that time. But because it was so far away from any kind, it was very, very remote. They needed to be able to mill the ore on site. So they were only shipping pure metal, not the waste, and paying for that. You just couldn't afford to do that. So anyway, he got them interested and finally got a mill built. And it could work with, like him, my dad, and my dad's brother could actually run it by themselves. They didn't need anybody else. It was brand spanking new, very expensive, my dad. And when the government came in, he had paid the mill off. He had paid cash for a house in Las Vegas. He owed nobody money anywhere. Everything that came out of that mine was going to be pure profit. And that's when they got bombed.
Okay, so guys, if you wouldn't mind reposting this space out, because I want everybody to hear Martha's story. Okay, so what time are we up to now? When
well, it's kind of all over the place. The government actually had some type of a airfield back in 1941 is what I was told, but it was defunct. I was born in 1952, and they started the nuclear bombs on January 27th of 1951. And that's the part that really concerns me with my part of this story.
Okay, so just so that everybody understands, do you know about what time the federal government first approached, given those two markers where you've got 1951 and the atomic activity, and had the federal government came to your family before that and tried to buy the farm because they didn't want you guys to know about what was going on? What's that part?
No, what
Okay.
they did, this is really, really tragic. What they did is they had airplanes, which is kind of funny because the Air Force gets the blame for everything. But there was no Air Force at that time. There was no Area 51 at that time. And yet there were planes. And these planes were flying. We had Native Americans that my dad knew. They never lived on a reservation. They traded with my family. They were all on very friendly basis. And they herded their horses down the canyons because they traded horses. And they shot them out of their planes, 50 caliber machine guns, and just slaughtered these horses.
So that if it was before the Air Force, it would have been before 1947.
It was 1947.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is there was no Air Force presence out there.
Yeah.
There was no base.
There was not Nellis Air Force Base.
No.
Correct.
No.
Okay.
It might have been in Vegas. I'm not sure when they started that.
But the bombing range and all of that other stuff
that I'm speaking about right now did not come from Area 51. They didn't come from this airfield before. They came from somewhere else.
Okay. So the it's interesting to understand this because from 1941 to like 1949 they were using Nellis Air Force Base, but it was not in the same way in which they use it now. And so that's the point that she's trying to make, is that there was not this large military presence there. And if they're basically dropping bombs, there are particular aircraft that you would use in order to do that. And so it didn't look like it does now. So just keep that in mind as she's talking about what happened. So from her family's story, there were aircraft, potentially bombers, like nuclear armed bombers in some cases, that were brought in from other bases to harass the people, shoot the horses, and do all of these things. So there's basically like a non-attribution. No one knew where they were coming from or basically what they were dropping necessarily at the time. So go ahead.
That's correct. It became a war zone, and everybody left except for my grandfather, my family. They just refused to leave. My dad was in World War II. They took him out of high school when he turned 18 and sent him over to the South Pacific. He fought with honor in World War II, had 2 or 3 Bronze Stars, quite a few medals. But at any rate, to come back and find this in your own front yard is a little unsettling. And he didn't take it well, nor did my grandfather. So, but the Native Americans moved down. I believe they moved to the Timbisha tribe down in California, in Death Valley, and they didn't want anything to do with any white men after what they went through. And it's a tragedy because, first of all, who even thinks about Native Americans who lived free without ever being on a reservation in 1947? But they did. And so that was taken away from them. And then we go up to my mother when they were living at the mine, when she got pregnant with me, and they had started the nuclear bombs already. And I don't know how many they set up. And I really never researched it because the whole story is just appalling to me. But anyway, my mom hemorrhaged, and they got her to town, and she was told that she had had a miscarriage. And so they took her back to the mine, and it turned out later that I was there. There was, I was not miscarried. I don't know if there was a twin. I just don't know. But at any rate, there was a man who literally put his life in jeopardy, who worked for the government, with the nuclear bombs and stuff, some kind of a doctor. And he took my dad aside. And I don't know exactly what he told him. My dad would never say, other than he told him to get my mom out of there. And they did. They left that day. But they came back all the time. They didn't ever come back while the bombs were being set off. Nobody understood the radiation and the fallout, none of that stuff. They just didn't know. And they were lied to constantly. They actually had my parents wear film badges to monitor the radiation. But they weren't monitoring it to help them. They were monitoring it for their science project. And you cannot find anywhere, you can't find the data. It doesn't exist. I don't know what they did with it, but it's certainly, they didn't help people.
So tell me how many people were present around that time period. There was, how many of your family members were living there?
My grandfather and grandmother, my uncle, my mom, and my dad. Now, they had a bunch of miners out there. My mom used to work in the boarding house. But most of them left because they were shooting up the property, and they did affidavits and stuff. And it was like, well, we thought maybe we could leave or get killed. So we left.
So they were shooting at the workers? Like harassing them?
They shot at everything. They didn't care. Yeah, when I was 2 years old, my brother and I were playing outside, and they came over with their jets, and they were shooting 20 feet away from us. Just tore up the whole hillside. My grandmother ran and grabbed us and ran into the cellar and hid out from them.
So they were doing strafing runs within 20 feet of people,
children,
on property they didn't own.
Exactly. And not just people, children. A 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these people, they just didn't care. Whatever they could do to terrorize you, they did. And I will tell you, I was terrorized as a child. I was so afraid to even go to sleep because these nameless, faceless people were going to come out from under my bed and they were going to kill me, and I think I would finally fall asleep just by passing out, literally. And then I would wake up and I would finally get the nerve to get out of my bed, and I would go into my mom and dad's room, and I couldn't even talk. I would just stand there, breathing. And then they'd wake up and put me in bed for a while, and then I'd wake up again back in my bed. And this went on for a while. I mean, it was extremely, extremely traumatizing as a child.
I bet. Okay, yeah. So you've been shot at, they're dropping or detonating nuclear bombs. So who came and gave your family the badges to record the level of radiation, and what was said to them?
Well, they actually had monitoring station up on our property. My family was very patriotic, and they helped them. They allowed them to have their radiation monitoring sites. They had, the mine at that time had electricity throughout the whole mine, all the cabins. It was very up to date and, you know, pretty ritzy. And they had phones and the whole thing. It doesn't look like that now, but you get bombed enough and things change. But at any rate, they, I don't even know what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought.
We're talking about the mine and the fact that they were detonating bombs, and who came and gave the monitoring equipment. Did they identify what agency they were with? Do you know anything about the people that actually came to set up that equipment?
They said they were with the AEC. You never knew who anybody was. That's, I think, why I was always so afraid of these nameless, faceless people.
The Atomic Energy Commission.
Yes.
Okay.
Which later morphed into now is the Department of Energy.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had carte blanche. They answered to no one. Believe it. I don't believe there was a president they answered to. I just don't think there was any of it. And when they decided to make Area 51, the guy that chose the place and oversaw the U-2 aircraft he held the purse strings for OSS. He was Richard Bissell Jr., who was good buddies with Alan Dulles. Everybody hears about him all the time, but nobody too much hears about Richard Bissell Jr.
We've definitely talked about him.
We have. Yes. Yes, you have.
Yeah.
But, you know, you don't see that anywhere else.
No.
He went under the radar
big
time. And I got to tell you, this is so funny because on the Dreamland Resort website, they have quotes of different things. That's a wonderful website, by the way. But one of the things he said, Richard Bissell Jr. in 1962, he was all angry, and he wanted to know why they had not been able to evict those miners out of there.
Yeah.
They had done everything. Nuked them, shot at them, bombed them, and they're still there.
And so you're talking about a time frame. You said you were born in the early 50s, and so the time frame where they were strafing would have been like in the mid 50s. And just so
no, it was before that, because I was only 2. It was 1954 when my grandma was hiding in the cellar with my brother and I. They started strafing before I was born and just continued on.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I just meant while you were alive, when you were about 2, that would have put us in the middle 50s. And what I wanted to point out is that for those of you who follow the Operation Gladio side of all of this, is that Bissell was one of those guys when I was talking to War Hamster about the secret societies. What you find is a lot of these people end up at that one grooming school, is what I call it, called Groton, Groton. And if you go back and you look at Bissell, not only was he from that, there were several in his class that end up going on to be not just in the OSS, but in the CIA as career. But Bissell stood out to me because he was one of the ones that was sent over to London in order to go to the School of Economics over there, which, you know, goes into the whole Cambridge, the Cecil Rhodes, all of those people. So you know that he was being groomed. And the guy we just talked about this past, like yesterday, last week, Averell Harriman. So Bissell went to work for Averell Harriman to work on the Marshall Plan. He worked in the State Department in the Office of Policy Coordination. If you guys remember, that was Frank Wisner's area that was chopped out of the State Department and basically inserted into the CIA when it stood up. So this guy is the guy, I mean, like he's at the heart of this Operation Gladio Evil Empire kind of thing. And so she mentioned the Area 51 that was set up originally by the CIA to field the U-2 plane. The U-2 program was not an Air Force program. It was a CIA program that then got given to the Air Force in order to begin flying missions with, and many of the people that flew the U-2 ended up in the CIA program. So seating some of them in the Air Force gave them a pipeline to be able to field their program in the CIA. And that was the only reason they did that. So I just wanted to add those pieces to all of this so that everybody can put those two things together. And that's the reason why I wanted you to hear. And of course, this was all done under Eisenhower, evil bastard.
Yes.
So I just wanted for you guys to tie those things together and understand who Bissell is. So go ahead.
Yes, it was a CIA base, and anything else was basically a lie for a very long time. They did intertwine it, but that was just basically so they could gain ground and fool people and get money over here and over there. Richard Bissell also ran assassination teams.
Yep.
And so when they went in the Gladio operation down there into Latin America, and that guy was very instrumental in all of it. And very instrumental with the nuclear weapons and the new propulsion systems, the whole thing. He was a brilliant man, no doubt, but he was as evil as they come.
Yes. And, he took over from Frank Wisner and was involved in the assassination of, in the overthrow of Iran and Guatemala and all of those. So, dead on. Yep. Okay. Keep going.
And his father was also in the insurance company in the Hartford. They were from Connecticut, supposedly. And he had the goods on who had fire insurance and who did not, which came in very handy when our mill was bombed, because our mill was bombed on January 23rd of 1954. It was literally bombed. They dropped a bomb from a plane, and they'll try to say, or an air wing tank. No, it bullseyed the processing plant. Bullseye. Perfect. And it blew things. It first exploded, and the sheet metal and stuff was actually found underneath some of the heavy equipment used to process the ore. And then it burned.
So what time frame was this?
This was in 1954, June 23rd.
Okay.
And there was still no Area 51 yet. There was no base. So where these airplanes came from, you tell me. And was it Air Force? I don't believe so. I believe it was CIA. But they had some good pilots.
Well, what's interesting about what you just said, because one of my best friends is a U-2. Well, he was a U-2 pilot twice. And 1954 is when that plane was basically being sourced for, excuse me, operational with Lockheed, by the way.
Yes.
And so, so that coincides with, okay, look, we're going to use this area out in the middle of nowhere in 1954 with us developing the U-2, and we're going to move that out there for the experimental test flights and stuff like that. So we need to get rid of those pesky people that we can't get rid of.
Right. I think the reason that they didn't try to get rid of us at first is I honestly, in my heart, believe they were using us as nuclear guinea pigs. They were doing testing. They were, whatever little thing they had going on, they needed some people there to do that on. But by 1954, they had accomplished that goal. And they wanted us gone. But they don't want to pay for it. They, you know, my family was so patriotic, and they would have sold them that place for probably the pennies on the dollar that they finally stole it for, you know, and they just never, ever wanted to do the right thing. And they still haven't to this day. So they prefer to bomb us instead of buy the property.
Well, but Martha, these are the same people that are doing this all over the world at the same time. Yeah,
when we started doing the Gladio operation, I cannot tell you how happy I was, because all of my life I have watched this transpire all around the world.
Yes.
It is the exact same thing that happened to us.
Yes.
It only happened to us on a small family-sized scale.
Well, because you were the only holdout. If there would have been 20 families out there, they'd have still done the same damn thing.
Well, yeah, because they already did it to them, but they ran off soon.
Yeah.
We didn't run off. We tried to stand our ground, but you know, that didn't work out so well.
Okay.
Well, I guess it did, because here we are.
So now we've got 1954, 1955, and they bombed the mill that was used to process the ore out of the mine. So your mining is kind of dead in the water. What happened next?
Once they blew up the mill, my grandfather made $80,000, I believe, the last year that the mill had operated, and that was in, you know, I don't know, 1951 money or 50. I'm not sure exactly the time, but he made a tremendous amount of money, and like I said, he owed no one. He was a wealthy man. These weren't just some little hicks out with a hammer and a pick. He was a mining engineer. My uncle was an engineer. You know, they're very, very smart people who knew what they were doing. And the government tried to convince people, basically, that we were hicks and not good Americans. Un-American, they called us, because we didn't like being pushed around. I know in 1953, I believe it was, they let off the Dirty Harry bomb, and they had all of the guys up there on our property with their station. My uncle took a phone call from them down at the base or wherever they were. He took a phone call because the other guy was out working on a generator, the guy that worked for the AEC. The phone call, the guy was just losing his mind that they had dumped a whole bunch of radiation on the sheep herders that were over the mountain from us, and that they had to do something about it. Anyway, he took that phone call personally. So he relayed the message. The next thing you know, they had a helicopter go with guys in their suits. They never did get out of the helicopter, from what I was told. They just went down, and they told them to get out of there.
The sheep herders?
The sheep herders.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were taking their sheep back to Utah. There's only one way to do that, and they had thousands of sheep. And so what happened was, on the way to Utah, the sheep were grazing off of the land. It was burning out their mouths, their stomachs. They were aborting lambs. Some didn't have hair. Some didn't have legs. It was a horrendous, horrendous sight. And now I was only told this, but I was told this by my family. And so I totally know it's true. At any rate, the sheep herders could never get any kind of justice off these guys. They lied. They said that it was bad range conditions. That's why the sheep
yes, you put nuclear waste on them. They're very bad.
5,000 sheep.
Yeah.
it put some people out of business.
Right.
You know, it just destroyed their lives.
Right.
So they filed a lawsuit, and my grandfather and my uncle went to court to testify on that lawsuit. They made my grandfather turn over his diary because he meticulously wrote about every nuclear bomb, every detonation, everything that happened, all of it. They had him turn in his diary, and they ripped out the pages that were about that. And he didn't even get his diary back for like 2 years. And this is where it comes up to even now. The sheep herders lost. They lost because the government lied, they committed fraud, they did everything wicked you can think of. And so they lost, but their lawyer stuck with them because he knew that it was such huge injustice. 35 years later, they proved that the government lied and did all this stuff. And so they took it back to the court that they lost in. The judge was irate, overturned the verdict, sent it back and said new trial. The government appealed that and went to the Ninth Circuit Court, and they overturned the judge and said, well, they can do it, you know, sovereign immunity. Basically, the king can do no wrong. So it's not a point of if they killed all your sheep and nuked everybody. The point is they could do whatever they want. And so they tried to appeal it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court just didn't hear it. That was the end of that.
That's crazy.
Isn't it?
Okay.
The things that went on. The Western United States was a literal war zone between Nevada, Utah, Arizona, even going on over, you know, the fallout all went east.
Right.
That's what people really don't realize. It hit the jet stream. We had a newspaper that said the cloud was hanging harmlessly over the East Coast.
A radiation cloud hanging harmlessly.
Pardon?
A radiation cloud hanging harmlessly over the United States.
Over the East Coast, yes.
Yeah.
It was the headline in the Henderson Home News.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? And people just don't realize the gravity of this situation, of what they did.
Okay, so now we've got the sheep herder. What's the next thing? What's the next shoe to drop?
Well, I didn't have a lot of issue with them during the 60s, and I don't know if that was that I just didn't pay a bunch of attention or what, you know.
But y'all are still living there. Y'all are living there during the 60s.
We all lived. My family lived in Henderson, and my grandfather lived in Las Vegas. You couldn't live there. Once they blew up the mill.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
You couldn't make a living anymore.
Okay.
And so everybody went to Vegas, but we still went out there all the time.
Okay.
You know, and we would stay there we'd go out on weekends, really a lot. And then, you know, we'd go out for a couple weeks here, a week there, and always on Thanksgivings and over that holiday, we'd go Christmas tree hunting and pick pine nuts and all that fun stuff. But we could not live there like they did before. Okay. That was just
I knew you left at some point. I was just trying to clarify when that was. Okay. So,
but then when it really got bad again was in the 70s, and they put a guard shack on the road that my dad, my uncle, and my grandfather built because they took our other road away. We had a road that had gone straight south down to Indian Springs, Nevada, to where the railroad was. And after they nuked everything, they took that away. So they built this other road, which they now call Groom Lake Road. And that's a lie, too. That is actually And she said, Barbara, they've got a little
Sorry, my
guardhouse
husband
out
came
there
in.
on our road with armed guards. She says, well, I'm going to call them and see what's going on here. And so she called and called back, and she said, Avis, there's no guard shack out there. And my mom's like, Barbara, there is a guard shack out there, and it has armed guards in it. So she says, I'm going to call him back. She calls him back and calls my mom and said, well, yeah, they said there is a shack out there, but there's no guards in it. My mom was like, Barbara, there are guards in it, and they have guns, and they won't let us through our own road. So finally, I guess she got mad, and she called them, and they said they'd let us through. So that started a whole big thing. And right around, somewhere around in that time period, my dad, who never trusted any of them, he was reading through the want ads in the back of the newspaper, and all of a sudden he got really angry. And it turned out that they had done a 90,000 acre land grab, is what they were trying to do. And it included our property. And they put it in the back of the newspaper. But my dad caught them. And so he wound up having to go to Congress. They got quite a few people involved. They had to do an environmental impact statement. They didn't get to just steal the land at that time. So they had to do this environmental impact statement, all of this stuff. And to get their property, they had to, of course, give us back our 400 acres. That's why the actual withdrawal turned out to be 89,600 acres. They wanted 90,000, but they didn't get our 400. And it became part of the law for that, for the taking. They had to guarantee that our rights would be upheld, which, needless to say, that's not going on. What's going on right now is they're breaking the law.
So you were required by Congress to be given egress into and out of your property and retain 400 acres of that property.
And retain all of our rights. We owned all the rights of way.
Right.
And we owned the water.
Okay.
The mine, where our mine is a basin. And water comes from the north, the east, and the west. I mean, Nevada has a beautiful aquifer system. Everybody thinks it's just desert, but they don't know. Anyway, these aquifers come right through our property. You couldn't even blow a hole without hitting water. Everywhere there was water. And really good water too, I might add.
Right.
But at any rate, it flows out the end of our property, just like if you turned a faucet on. So we owned all of that. You know, in Nevada, you use the way the laws were back then. That was called an appurtenance, or however they say it. But you used as much as you needed. We could do mining, agriculture, manufacturing, or other purposes. That was our rights.
Right.
We could use our property for whatever we wanted.
Right.
And I don't know if people are aware, but almost all ski resorts are sitting on patented mining ground. That's how they got them. And then they take and get a little bit of Forest Service land so they can complete, they lease that so they can complete that. But all the condos they sell, all of this, all their hotels, all that stuff is sitting on top of patented mining ground. You can do anything you want. I know my friend Snow put up a picture of Trump Hotel. Well, you could do that. It's perfectly legal.
Right.
And it's your right to do that. So anyway, they had to give us all of our rights. They couldn't take anything away from us. And then they said they would, and they said they would honor all this. Now we were into the Air Force, and they would honor this agreement. Well, they didn't honor it.
In what
They
way?
never honored anything.
In what way did they not honor it at this point? So you basically challenged the fact that, and you were then, after you were kept from entering your property with the armed guard, you were then allowed back onto it at that point.
Yeah, they in fact, we were always allowed onto it. But what happened was, after that, they started making us go. Well, we had to give them notification before we came out there. They had to have our social security numbers, our names, our date of birth, all of this stuff to go into our own road. And I don't know how anyone else would feel about having that at the end of their driveway, but I didn't really appreciate it.
So basically, those are the same requirements to get on a military base. So they are
Yes.
treating you as if they've already acquired your property and pretending like it's still yours, but in reality, they're limiting your access and treating it as if it was already a military installation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And at the same time period there, I could be wrong about the years, but I'm thinking it's the late 70s when it started. They like one time they asked us to stay inside between this hour and this hour. They didn't want us seeing whatever they were going to be flying or whatever they were going to be doing, which was very unusual. They mostly didn't care, what we saw. But at any rate,
but talk a little bit about that, because where you were located, you were basically overlooking Area 51. Was that not true?
Yes, absolutely. They're in our front yard.
Yeah. And so anything that they would have been doing, and just so that you guys know, there's not aliens there, but basically what Area 51 has done over time, and it kind of basically dovetails into Operation Gladio, is there would be submarines or ships or aircraft that, over a period of time, from quote unquote enemy forces that we wanted to steal technology from, and they basically would use the Area 51 to basically, on the air side, to recreate, reverse engineer aircraft. And then they would take some of the best pilots. They would teach them to fly. It was basically, I don't know if you guys know what Edwards Air Force Base is, but Edwards out in California is a test base for legitimate aircraft. So if we want to buy the F-35 or the F-16 or the F-15 or whatever, the competing companies all bring their models out to Edwards, and then they run them through the paces out there, doing all kinds of test flights on them. So they were using Area 51 basically as a secret place to do that with enemy aircraft, because they didn't want the enemy to know we had them. So that's
there was a lot. It's a lot more than that.
No, I know, but I want to give people a feel for what was going on there and why it bugged the hell out of them that you guys were there and you might actually see something they didn't want you to see.
But it's kind of like I said, once the base went in, we had some terrible guards. I don't know who hired the guards. They were definitely Gestapo. They loved to pull guns on you and threaten to kill you all the time. They were the worst of the worst.
Well, they were probably CIA trained assassins.
That's what I think. That's my guess. But the people that worked out there, it became more and more of a change. Like here's an example. One of the kids, I mean, I don't want to say who it was because they have their own story, but one, at 2 years old, fell off of the porch and hit their head on a barrel that was down the staircase, and it knocked them out. And we took them down to the base, and they took them in immediately with my parents, and they treated them, and they said, you know, if we can't take care of this, we will fly him to Washington D.C. to wherever, Bethesda, I don't know, wherever their places were. Just some very good people that were under the radar. I don't even know their names. Another time we had someone who was injured, and we took them down there, and they had to be at a hospital. And so they made them wear things that you couldn't see, but they literally flew them in a Black Hawk to Las Vegas to a hospital and landed on the roof. You know, and I mean, these are things that nobody thinks about, and we generally never spoke about. But I'm only speaking about it because I met some very, very good people mixed in with gladio scum of the earth.
Yeah.
You know, and it gives you hope.
Well, and I think most of your interactions that you and I have texted about or communicated online about was your interactions with the people that are patriotic Americans in the military, specifically the Air Force, as you were just mentioning, basically treated your family with respect and almost apologetic for what the actual government was doing, and that was driven in large part by the CIA.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, my brother was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he flew Apache helicopters. He was very instrumental in the Black Hawks, and I don't even know what all. You know, I never ask him questions or anything, but you know, with him being in the military, and I know what a fine man he was. You couldn't find a better man who was very patriotic, but believed in the Constitution and the right way of doing things, you know, and he wasn't the only one. So those are the people I try to grab onto and hold on to. Otherwise, you can be a very angry person, and I don't want to be that.
So where are you guys at right now? What's the status of all of that right now?
Oh, we lost in court.
So tell us about that. Tell us about that.
We had an Obama-appointed judge. Well, see, first of all, before they took it, I went out there with two of my grandchildren on the 4th of July. I was meeting some cousins and that up there, and up at the mine. They were already there, and we came from Colorado. So I come in on the 4th of July.
What year, Martha?
This guard
what year?
Pulls me over. He doesn't even let me get to the guard check. I mean, he pulls me over on public road.
What year was this, Martha?
He tells me, you know, to do this and do that, get me your ID. And then I said, I've already been cleared to come out here. I said, you need to call the guard check. And he reached in there and pulled out a big rifle, pointed it right at me and said, lady, I'll blow your head off. Well, that was it for me, because I had been terrorized. My children had looked down the barrel of a gun, and now you're going to go after my grandchildren. And that's enough for me.
What year was that, Martha?
Oh, God. I started cussing that guy. I don't know how many times I said the F word, but it was a lot. And I told him he was up and crazy. You put that gun away and da-da-da. Anyway, it went on. My grandchildren were terrified. They thought I was going to get killed. And
so
what
do
were
you,
they going to do? And,
Martha, Martha, do you know about what year that was?
That was 2015.
Okay.
The 4th of July.
Okay.
And I was really glad that my family tried to get the video of it, and they were told that there was no evidence of it. Well, that means they deleted it. And that's okay with me because it was most definitely not my final moment, you know?
Hey, we all have them. We all have them.
Oh, I was just, I can't tell you how furious I was because I know what it's like to be traumatized.
Yeah.
And when people are threatening to kill you or kill your grandma or whatever, anybody who's ever been in a war knows how the trauma of all of those kind of things and what the children go through. It's just horrendous.
Okay, so we're at 2015. And it basically had been status quo where you guys were using it as a recreational facility. No one's living there. Then what happened?
And, you know, in 2014, my family started meeting with your friend. I asked you if you knew her. Kathleen Ferguson.
Yeah, the civilian that was in
And
charge of the civil engineering in the Air Force.
Yes, and she met with my family and she didn't know anything about what had transpired throughout the time. And I don't know, she seems like she must have been so appalled by it. This is my guess. Only she could say. But all of a sudden she was gone. And we got this horrible woman in, Jennifer L. Miller, who wrote us letters. This happened 2 months after. First, we met with your friend a couple of times. The family did. Mm-hmm. And then we said, no, we're not interested in your offer, you know. Well, then she's gone. I get held at gunpoint and threatened to be killed in front of my grandchildren. And then 2 months later, we get letters from this woman that they're going to take the property, and if we agree to this $5.2 million settlement, when my mother, who was 86 years old at the time, when she died, we could bury her next to my dad out at the mine, because that's where my dad is. And if we didn't take the money, we would not be allowed to bury her out there. But if we did, we could bury her and we could go out every year or two, whatever, and tend the graves. But we said no anyway. I have not been able to forgive this woman for what she did. You know, you are taking an 86-year-old woman who dearly loved her husband and is only going to live so much longer. And you're basically holding this hostage to us, you know. If we don't take your money, you're not going to let us bury our mom next to our dad, knowing full well that is her only wish. She didn't care about anything else. And so I haven't been able to forgive this woman, and I don't think I ever will. But at any rate, then the colonel, he talked about what a fine family we are. He put out a really nice press release. Well, the lady, this Jennifer Miller, she didn't like that. So she pulled that press release and deleted it and put her own out of how we couldn't be making a windfall, basically like we were greedy people, you know, just trying to get over on them. And that was never the case. Never. But he said that, you know, the most important thing was he couldn't guarantee our safety anymore. And the only safety I could think of was the guy pulling the gun on me, threatening to kill me. Now that's your guy. This is not our family. This is your people. And if you don't have better control on your people, that they're not going around threatening some grandma that they're going to kill her in front of her grandbabies, well, maybe you need to clean your house instead of steal mine. And so that's the way I see it, and I still see it that way. I'm very irate. It was stolen property. They never had to take it. It was never about what we could see or couldn't see. We lived my entire life, you know, being up the hill. We probably saw more than most of the people that were down there because we were there for so many decades. But at any rate, that's what they did. And when we said, no, we're not going to take your money, it turned out pretty nasty. Pretty nasty. They had a judge that was an Obama judge that we went after. Well, first of all, we went after the tourist thing where you can build hotels and you can do all this stuff because that's your rights in valuing this property. Well, the next thing we know, she is promoted to Chief Justice in Nevada, although she had been censured before, and she was a relatively new judge. She became Chief Justice, and 2 or 3 days later, I'm thinking it was 2, she threw out our evidence. We were no longer allowed to present. We were not allowed to present any of our surveys, even though this is what all the casinos, all the tourist people use, the exact same people and things that we used to calculate the value. We couldn't use any of it. She had already made it where we could not use the fact that our mill was bombed by them because that would so infuriate a jury that they would give us a lot of money.
Right.
And you can't have that. So she just kept taking everything away. And then she also took the jury away. We can't have a jury. We wound up with a jury of their peers, 3 retired federal court judges, district court judges. And there was nothing we could do about that either. We are, to my knowledge, the only family in the history of this nation to have that happen to in a eminent domain case.
So, Martha, what you're describing here is basically what all of the January 6th people just went through as well, as far as the limiting. Yeah. And so that's kind of the point of making sure people understand that that was not an isolated case. This is a story that has happened to so many citizens of the United States. And that's why I go on my tirade every once in a while when people say that all of these people around the world hate us for our freedoms. You people are not free. We have not been free for 100 years. It's all an illusion. You live a hologram of freedom. There is no freedom here. They will take your rights anytime they want to, for any reason.
Absolutely. And for no reason.
Yes.
They don't need one.
Correct.
All they need is to want your stuff. And I will tell you unequivocally, we were supposed to be the January 6th people before they were. But we didn't go there. We had people come to our houses and say that they wanted to go out there and stand their ground for our property.
They were setting you up. They were setting you up.
Absolutely. I don't know how many of them were FBI or whatever, but let me tell you something. It's not like the Bundy Ranch where people are driving down the freeway and they see you. You know, that's not going to happen. You are on a dirt road, one way in and one way out. And they know you're coming along before you hit that dirt road.
Right.
Yeah. And so by the time you get there, it's just sitting ducks.
Yes.
You got to be kidding me. And not only that, who were these people that approached us? First of all, how did they know where I lived?
Because they're part of the government.
That's what I think. But at any rate, we didn't do that. And, you know, when the Bundy thing happened, I remember everybody cheering because the Bundys won. And I said, they're not done with the Bundys. Anybody who thinks they are is off their rocker. I actually put it on Facebook. They are not done with the Bundys. And they weren't. You know, I've never seen justice for what happened to Lloyd Finnegan. He was murdered. If you slow down the videotape, you can see the guy come out around the SUV, shoot him, and then go back. And it caused the Oregon State Police and the other people to murder him. And it's very easy to see. All you have to do is take the original video, slow it down, and you can see the whole thing happen. But nothing has ever happened to them. Anyway, that was their goal there. I actually saw it. I don't know if anyone is aware of Tosh Plumley. He was in the CIA. He used to run drugs for them, and he became a whistleblower. I accidentally wound up, I saw something that clicked in my head, and it took me to his page. And he was talking about how they had planned on doing all this stuff. That was his intel, and they planned on doing all this stuff and blaming it on us. And
like all what
it
stuff?
made perfect sense to me.
Like what stuff was he talking about?
Killing people, shooting people that came out to defend our property. It was a giant setup.
Right.
Yeah, but we said no. We just, it's not worth it. I don't want to start a civil war or something like that. We're still fighting. I'm sitting here speaking with you, and I don't care if they won in court. They won in court by fraud and by going against the Constitution and a jury of their peers. And there's nothing just about it. But I don't need to get people killed to prove that. And that's not going to solve anything. That would only make it worse. Look what January 6th did to so many people.
Right.
It's just tragic. And it's really sad to me that they had no idea how that could go. Because I can look at things and go, oh man,
Right.
I know what they're going to do now. They're going to really stick it to them.
Right. And I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, the whole idea of that operation was to terrify people into not protesting their government in the future.
Yes, I do know.
Yeah. So,
I'm well aware of it.
Yes, I know
That's
you
what
are.
it did to me and my family all of my life.
and oh, by the way,
It's always about terror. And then they want to talk about the war on terror when they're the terrorists.
they are the terrorists. But I did want to
Yes.
let everybody know the evil woman that she was talking about, Jennifer L. Miller, is still employed by the United States Air Force today.
No, I don't think she is.
Yes, she is.
Oh, she is?
She is an acting undersecretary of the Air Force. Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's what she was, but I saw.
No, she was the staff director for the headquarters Air Force. So she basically is like, they have a chief of staff of the Air Force. They have also like the secretary of the Air Force. She's running the staff for the secretary of the Air Force. But because one of the undersecretaries left when Trump was inaugurated, she's actually filling in as an acting undersecretary right now.
Oh, because you see, on the 15th, she went to being something for one of the counties in Virginia.
Well,
And she was no longer, her job with the Air Force was no longer her job. It was given to a guy. Now, maybe what you're talking about, maybe they called her back.
I don't know. It says that her new assignment as acting undersecretary started in the middle of January 2025. So unless they've just not updated it in the last couple of weeks and she walked out and was only in that job for a week, which is possible, it still shows she's employed there.
Yeah, I found something different. I found that she is.
But the whole
not
point is that she worked from like the mid 2000s, say 2005 through, I don't, let's see, she didn't move over to installations. And then she moved over there as the general counsel. So for about 10 years, she was a lawyer that having to do with real estate, which is
In
why she
Seattle
was,
for a while.
yeah.
But she joined Senior
Well,
Executive Services.
in Seattle, she was actually at a private law firm. When
Yeah.
she moved to AFCEA, which is the Air Force Civil Engineering that does like, she was in charge of the privatization of the housing, which was moving all of our base housing off base, which is very unsafe, and contract that out, which has been a disaster. And
She's a horrible woman.
yeah, she started doing that in 2005.
Yeah.
And then from 2005 until just within the last couple of weeks, she has worked at the Air Force, basically between San Antonio and Washington, D.C., because those are the two civil engineering major hubs for the Air Force. And civil engineering takes care of our real estate.
Yeah, she worked with a guy named David Walterscheid down in Texas.
Yeah.
And he was another winner. We were actually able to get rid of him because he was caught lying. He lied to me, you know, when they said, oh, they were going to go through Congress. Well, he was on the phone with me and said, well, we already went through Congress. We did that before we ever talked to you. So they were just filling in blanks. But then I got off the phone with him and I called my brother who was with my daughter, and I told him what happened. I said, this guy, you know, this is ridiculous. Well, he had my daughter call him and she was chit-chatting with him and she brought it up and he said, oh yeah, we already went through Congress. But we never found out who they went through Congress with. I have no idea.
Well, it'd have to be somebody on the Armed Forces Committee.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody must have got a nice payoff.
Somebody must have from the CIA.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, I don't know anybody out at that base that had a problem with us other than that guard that was inserted.
Right.
You know. And by the way, we also buried my mother out there. I just want everybody to know that this is what you do as an American. No matter who tells you you can't, you just do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And nobody said a word to us. We took our little cement mixing machine and a bunch of bags of cement, and my brothers and cousins started digging the hole over there next to my dad. They did it all in one day, set a headstone, and we had us a little service before we left that day.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. Yeah. But you just have to push back when they do things like that. That is just unconscionable. I'm gonna hold your mother where she's buried over your head.
Yes. They will use anything. They will use anything.
Who do you think you are, lady?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there were people there. One of my cousins took a window out of the main cabin of the kitchen. It was an old, really cool window. They weren't supposed to do it. Nobody was supposed to take anything off of the cabins, but they did. And some people from the base brought plywood and stuff up, and they actually boarded our cabin up. And this is after we were gone. They'd already seized the property. See, we found out a lot of things afterwards, but like they hired us to go take our own stuff out of there because it was far cheaper than hiring a company. They said it would take them 6 months, and then they had to put all of our 130 years worth of stuff in warehouses and that for a year. This is the federal law. So what they did is they just paid us and gave us 2 weekends, sun up to sundown, 50 people on site to get our stuff. And we were able to do that. I mean, we did leave, some hoists and that, which are so heavy. You would have to have very heavy equipment to even pick it up. But at any rate, we were able to move everything, and so we found out a lot of stuff, that they did through the course of that, and through a family member that went out there over the court case. So they were able to see.
Let me also harken back to when we were doing our around the world Operation Gladio tour and we got to Africa, and you guys remember how the World Wildlife Fund was going in and seizing national park lands in basically changing the designation to make them a national park, and then they would go in and put recreational of their buddies in the Club 1001. So, and then they would basically force the indigenous people off that land and then use them as like a entertainment site in these new village hut things that they had set up. And they would bring their tourists, their eco tourists, in these hotels that they put in this supposedly forested area that we want to preserve, which is why we had to kick all the indigenous people out. And then we use the indigenous people as entertainers for the billionaire eco-tourists that came to stay in their eco-tourist hotels that they built in this sacred land. And they would allow the people back on there for a period of time. Like in the one case where the Serengeti, it was like you can go back to your secret forest for one day for 24 hours once a year in order to get your secret herbs and stuff like that you use to keep your family healthy. What Martha is explaining to you guys is this very shit goes on in our country to our citizens. It is not something that just happens over there.
No, it happens here. Most people have been unaware of it because we have been spoiled Americans. You have your house, your new car, you're this, you're that, and then you have the news lying to you for your whole life. And so until the internet and the Great Awakening thing, people were very, very much unaware of what was going on around them. And we've been told how we're free and how we have the greatest country on earth. And, we're supposed to have the greatest country on earth. And I truly do believe it was blessed by God. But what has been done with it is a horror story. And by the way, when they didn't honor the agreement they made with Congress and with us, they implemented, get this, the good neighbor policy with us.
That's like a spit in your eye.
I was stunned when I saw you write about the good neighbor policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know. I didn't know that they had used that around the world.
Yes. Yes.
It's really not funny. But
it's not. It's like spitting in your face.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Here, you stupid minors, you hicks.
Yeah.
Let's do the good neighbor policy.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, since we don't have a choice, let's do that. We tried to get along, in all honesty, and we tried to be respectful. You do the best that you can, and most of them did too. I don't know who came up with the good neighbor policy, but since I found out about it, I've been like, you gotta be kidding me. They just regurgitate the same things over and over and over.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm going to open it up. Thank you so much, Martha, for telling your story. I want to open it up, and anybody that wants to come up and ask Martha any questions, please feel free to do so. Let's be respectful of her time and focus the questions on her material during this period of time. Stellar, go ahead.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing space. I want to let you know, my dad was the controller. He controlled the nuclear bombs at the Nevada test site. And yes, it was screaming full of CIA and operatives and things like that. But he did talk about your mine and your hill, because that's where people used to always want to go to watch these things going off and things like that. And when she's talking about like these barricades or the gates and stuff, she's not kidding. And now you can go through that one road that she was talking about. They call it Groom Lake Road. It goes to a dead end part of the thing, but you can hike in there. But no, it's very, very highly blocked off.
Absolutely. You know, did you ever hear about the guys that got dropped in to survey? There was, I think, 4 of them, and they didn't know anything about the desert. They were there with no food, no nothing, and they actually would have died. My grandfather just dragged them out of the desert, put them up at the mine, and took care of them. And I don't know if that became a story at the actual test site, but it should have been.
They were basically dropped in there to do surveys, and then had your grandfather not found them, they would have starved. Is that? I remember you saying that on Truth Social. Yeah.
Yes, they would have. And you know, my mother ran into one of the granddaughters, I believe it was, or daughter of one of those guys in Alabama, of all places, and she was a nurse. And she told my mom that her dad had wound up retiring from out there. She said, but he was never the same after what happened. I mean, apparently they came very close to dying. But you know, one good turn doesn't deserve another. Thanks for saving us. Now these next guys are gonna nuke the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that it was just a big science project. I think your family was a science project to the government and stuff like that, just like Utah, parts of Southern Nevada, and things like that. And the water that you're talking about, the aquifer, there's a lot of volcanic waters under there. I see Marie in here. She's from Lincoln County as well. So,
oh, I love Lincoln County. It's a beautiful county. My mother grew up in Caliente there, and my dad, he did some schooling in Pioche. He used to haul the ore into Caliente. And I had, on my mom's side of the family, they had a beautiful ranch down Rainbow Canyon. It's just gorgeous, that whole county. The petroglyphs, all of it.
So my dad's family had a mine. My dad's from Pioche. It's really weird because they had telephones in Lincoln County before they did in Clark County, which is really weird. And my dad's graduating class from Lincoln County High School was larger than the classes that were graduating in Las Vegas at the time. So, and my dad probably graduated high school about the time when all that stuff was happening to your family, by the way.
Oh, how interesting. And he graduated from Pioche?
Lincoln County High.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so it would have been whatever. I think the elementary school at that time was in Pioche. I think Pioche, Caliente, and I think Panaca even had their own elementary. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we had my dad's family. They were Christians, and they had a gold mine. And he used to call it the Queen. It kind of bordered off the Queen, but we had the water rights to it. And yeah, probably I want to say about 2017, my dad was really ill, and my other 2 uncles they're old. I mean, they were like in their 80s by then. They couldn't fight for it, but the mine literally took all of the water too. They took it all.
That's what they do. They take your patents and they just steal everything. It's terrible. And you know, there are some really great mines in Lincoln County. Really great mines.
Silver and gold and all kinds of stuff. And there's a lithium all around and everything. I mean, there's so many resources, and that's all that they've done is take it. And then when Obama was in, they also made all these forest lands, and they just made it so that it's even more. I mean, Nevada is 90% owned by government, I call the forest lands government too, BLM and forest lands and military bases.
Absolutely. I think it's more than 90. I think it's closer to 95, but that's a guess. I know they attached with the Basin and Range National Monument. they attached to the end of where the test site was. At that time, we still owned our property. They attached to the end of that and the test site and just went up and all in the Great Basin, the mineral, just the everything that's there, the water, just phenomenal.
The water was really huge because like in the 1800s, like, you know, they called Las Vegas the Meadows for a reason.
Yes.
You know, when the travelers were going cross country, they would come through this area and through Las Vegas. I mean, my uncle, when I was a kid, you could dig in his backyard and you could get water to come up. There was a lot of water, but the cartels were really big here. So everything that they, like what Colonel Towner, I mean, you brought it up again. What they've been doing in these other countries, doing their shenanigans, they've been doing it here as well.
Oh, you know, Nevada, big time.
Nevada, I mean, since we became a state, I mean, you could own land originally, allodial, which is sovereign, and then they switched it, and then they took everything. They took, you know, the resources underground. You know, at the turn of the century, I mean, water was just flowing through Las Vegas. I wish people understood that. I mean, there is so much water in this state.
The water came through a mesquite forest. There was a mesquite forest between Henderson and Vegas. And the water was like a stream, a big stream that came through it. It went down Mojave Road and down to the river or Lake Mead, whatever you want to call it. It was gorgeous.
Bonanza Road, just straight through the town. Yes. And then where they put the, when the railroads came through, Union Pacific was the one that was like really big, and they didn't want the water coming through because it affected the railroads and stuff like that.
Well, even
and
some
then
of
they ended up making the county cartel as far as stealing all the water from everybody.
Yeah, even some of the casinos would start to sink. The one in the Las Vegas shooting, that casino, they had to stop work
Mandalay
on
Bay.
that. Yes, Mandalay Bay. They had to stop work on that because it was sinking because of the water table. You know, but now you got Elon's tunnels going in there. I don't know. I don't even know what they've got going on. If they ever get an earthquake, it's going to be a big one because there is a big fault that goes all the way across Las Vegas, and the water in Nevada is huge. It's huge. I remember reading at one time that there was more water in Nevada than in any other state within it, but it didn't leave the state. It stayed all underground aquifers that came and drained. I know our water went to Death Valley, and it also went down to I can't think of the name of the place now. Dang it! But the water there's a cave, and when there's an earthquake on the other side of the world or something, the water will raise and lower inside this cave in Nevada. So you tell me what that's connected to.
It's connected to China.
It is.
So I will tell you that I looked up the other day the amount of land in Nevada that's owned by the federal government, and it's 85%. And the reason why I was looking that particular number up is because I was having a debate with a dear friend of mine about the fact that the federal government should not be in the business of owning any part of any state. He had a different opinion because he believes he's a hunter, and he believes that if their land is not set aside, that the state governments, because they are so corrupt, not that the federal government is not also corrupt, but that the states will sell it off, and then you'll have like Google owning, a quarter of that, and you'll have all of these billionaires that are own their chunk, basically like they have kind of done in Montana, and that's not necessarily a good idea either.
Well, this is why we need to go by the Constitution.
That's what I said, Martha.
Yeah.
I said you find it in the Constitution. Well, but in his defense,
the state constitutions need to be fixed because in Nevada, and I just Googled it, if you look up privately owned land, that's how you find it, because they have land that's state land. They also have BLM is a certain percentage, the military
Right.
bases are something, but if you ask for privately owned, it's 12% is only owned by the people
Right.
in Nevada.
But we were talking specifically about the federal government, and the federal government owns 85% of it.
Or well, actually, they own more. They've taken more since they put out that 85% number. They put that number out quite a while back.
Even like along the base of Mount Charleston. The base of Mount Charleston, yes. Which goes between Las Vegas, so it's the Sierra Nevadas. So you've got the Sierra Nevadas, the southern tip of it separates Las Vegas from Pahrump. Yes. And the Nevada test site, so it kind of goes into like a V type of a thing of how the stuff goes. So they had a town within on the base over there. They made it so that you couldn't even get on that property anymore. And that's at Mount Charleston. And then over in Valley of Fire, there was a town that was part of it, and the state ended up making it so that, when they passed away, it would come back to the state. And BLM land was only, when they did that, it was only supposed to be temporary until after the war and things like that. And the land was supposed to come back to the people, but it never did. And so now, if in Las Vegas, we're in a landlock here. So, and people don't even realize that. You fly in here and you see all this vacant land everywhere, and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to buy here, I want to buy.
No, they control all of it.
You can't buy anything. And the BLM, so if we get land, if the BLM will put stuff out so that they could be swaps, developers and stuff are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get land that was already owned, that should be owned by the state or by the people, not by the state, because the federal government took it, not even the state government.
Right. And they do things like they did to my dad. They advertise in the back of the newspaper. They do stuff over here. It's all secretive. And people have no idea. How many people have even read the Basin and Range National Monument executive order? I have. And I can tell you, it was a military land grant. Or they could tell you all about how they're protecting this and protecting that. No, what they're doing is they're stealing all the mining and the minerals and the water. And you can go out there, but you better take your own water and your own thing. And then you have to be careful, because this land can be used for any and all military purposes for them and their shareholders. Who the hell are their shareholders? That's what I've always wanted to know. They always have stakeholders, but they never tell you who they are. Well, that could be someone from Saudi Arabia or Turkey or wherever. And so these guys are out there flying in their helicopters and jets shooting at each other while you're out enjoying the National Monument. Get real. That's what they do, though.
And then they intimidate you, like when they were putting in the highway here. Harry Reid was doing all kinds of shenanigans here and stuff like that, and bullying, and even putting the IRS on people if they wouldn't sell their land.
Oh yeah,
there's I don't know how or why things got so crazy in this country when we have a constitution that's supposed to be protecting us.
Did you ever read the book Animal Farm?
Yes.
I read it when I was in the 5th or 6th grade, and they told me that it was about the Russian Revolution. But because of my experience at Groom Mine, when I read it, I saw it as, this is America.
It is.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. They just quit teaching people. They don't know about the Constitution. They don't know what it's like to be free. People will fight to be enslaved. It's amazing. And I can tell you, I know this sounds weird, but being out at Groom Mine, once we crossed into our land, I know what it's like to be free. We were 100% free. We controlled everything. They, by law, could not come onto our property without us saying so. Now, when we were there, other than the goons that came on and the bomb droppers and stuff, but when you were dealing with the regular people from the basin there, they honored our freedoms and our rights. And the ones who did, it just gave us carte blanche. We could do whatever we wanted, anything. You want to climb a mountain, go ahead and climb it. You want to go over here, you can do that. Oh, you want to light a fire, you can do that. You want to shoot your guns off your front porch, you can do that. You can do whatever you want. And people have no idea what that's like. No idea. You have to be responsible for it. You know, if you climb that mountain, you've got to be able to get back down.
Nobody's coming to save your ass.
No, nobody is. We built our own roads. We fixed our own machinery. We did everything on our own. We didn't have people come in. We didn't expect the government to provide us anything. They blew up our power plant when they blew up the mill. So I grew up with no electricity. But we would use lanterns and that, and we would still play cards and that. We didn't do TV. We listened to the radio, or, you know, but we were porch sitters. We loved looking at the stars out there. But you just didn't depend on other people to make you okay. And so eventually they built a new power plant. And they took that away too, but we still had it. Sometimes you feel like the ants, you know, where you just build and build, and then they take it. So you build over here, and they take that. Yeah. But I try to never get discouraged. That video, the Donald Trump video, Never Give Up, I listen to that often, because that to me is what makes or breaks you. It's how you look at it, how you treat other people. You know, you can take the bad things that have happened to you and cry and be a victim and feel sorry for yourself all the time and hate everybody, or you can find, you know, the good in it. What do I have to offer because of this that I wouldn't know about because of this? You can affect other people that way. And I just don't think that anyone should ever give up, no matter what.
I agree. I agree. All right. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to talk? Carrie, go ahead.
I just posted something in the pill. Oh, I'm echoing for some reason. Do you hear me echoing, or do I sound okay?
You're okay.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I just posted something in the pill from the Institute for Justice, and they have a Twitter feed, but they just got the Supreme Court to hear a case called Kalo versus City of New London, and it's about eminent domain. And I just wondered if she knew anything about the Institute for Justice and their work, and what her developments are in her own case. Thanks.
Have you ever heard of them, Martha?
She probably has to unmute her mic.
Martha, are you still with us?
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself somehow. I don't know about them, but I'm really glad that she came on and spoke about them, and I would love either a DM or put it on my page or whatever, because I want my property back. My property is stolen land. There was absolutely no reason to take it constitutionally.
Right.
You know, no reason. And
so
I just want it back. We didn't go through the Supreme Court because we got kangaroo courted big time. Big time. I actually fired the lawyers, not because they were bad, but because I could see where this was going. And the one thing that they requested is that we not speak because they didn't want to piss the judge off. Well,
the judge that screwed you?
Yes. She screwed him too. She screwed him hard.
Yeah.
And he didn't get paid because everything they did was a contingency.
Yeah.
So they didn't, unless they got a kickback somewhere, which I don't believe they did. And I do believe that he won that case hands down, but it didn't matter. Because when you have a jury of their peers, and then you ask the Ninth Circuit Court to overturn their peers, who was our jury, they're just not going to do it.
Right.
That's the way it works.
So I'm going to run a test here real quick.
So I would like to go back on it. I think there are a lot of people who have had their property stolen that should be rectified.
Right. So I'm going to run a test here real quick.
I should move next door to you.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm Native American, so I can relate. They killed all the buffalo that my people ate. I'm Blackfoot. They just murdered all the food.
Well, and that's why they killed the horses of the natives out where our property was.
Okay, guys,
that's exactly the same thing.
Guys, I need to break in here for just a second. I have to run a test here. All along said that when Martha and I were talking about Area 51, that you guys have known that anytime we have a space that they mess around with the sound. It doesn't matter. I've done it on Wi-Fi, not on Wi-Fi. I've done it on with a charger plugged in, without it plugged in. I've done it on I've done everything. And they still screw with our sound. Okay. So all along said, as soon as Area 51 came out of my mouth, there was this long interrupted audio problem. So I just want to say what I said before about Area 51, and you guys can tell me if they do it again. Just post it in the purple pill. So Area 51 had been used to, hold on, let me, Martha, can you mute your mic for just a second? Because we're getting some feedback. There you go. Thank you. Area 51 had been used to take acquired aircraft that was not an U.S. aircraft and basically reverse engineer it, train our pilots to fly on it so that they could perfect air-to-air procedures in order to be able to effectively use them as basically like red air tactics to see what they were capable of doing. So they did that there because of the remote and the ability to land and take off. And just so that you guys also know, I worked with an enlisted guy that did aircraft maintenance that was stationed there for like 6 years. And it is so remote that you are assigned at Nellis. Like this guy lived in base housing on Nellis, and they came, they went out there and they worked for, it depends on what career field you're in, but like 4 on, 3 off, where you go out there in a helicopter. You don't drive out there. There's no access to it. They helicoptered you out there. You stayed out there for 3 or 4 days, depending on what your job was. And then you got on a helicopter and you came back to Nellis. It is a very remote, very controlled access location. So anyway, now you guys can tell me to post in the purple pill.
Okay, I have to add on to this.
Sure.
And my friends that I am always talking about free energy to, 0 point energy. They can tune out now or laugh or whatever. But it's not just reverse engineering equipment. It is the ground itself. My dad explained to me like decades ago, he used to make crystal radios, him and his brother, out of the material from the mine. That is that galena that we spoke about. Well, galena, if you look it up, galena and transistors, they made a thing, it was called the cat's whisper. And you could tune in to radio stations, to that. It actually transmitted information, but it also stored information. That is what galena does. People don't understand minerals, and especially when you throw the water in there, because you are now generating electricity, and it goes all the way from this cat's whisper to quantum computing and beyond. It is so huge. There is no electronic device that doesn't have these important different minerals in them, and it's because of what they do. When God made our earth, he made it pretty spectacular, and they just kind of want people to think that, oh yeah, well, you just have gold. No, you don't just have gold. The ground itself is made as a creation device. There are vortexes. And I have been in a vortex on Groom Mine. I have had a sorting pit disappear and show up in my truck the next day. Things happen that are very strange. And then it doesn't have anything to do with someone else's knowledge. It has to do with that's the way they were created. And there is a harmonic situation that goes on that is part of the creation process. It's very huge. And our mine was full of these minerals. My dad was very aware of it, and he spoke to me about it. Now, at the time that he was telling me about it, I didn't really understand how big it was. But now that I understand more and I can look things up because of the internet and find things out, and you see like they're flying a plane that looks like a triangle, and it's got copper things on it. It doesn't have a regular engine. Well, you don't need a regular engine if you have mercury, which by the way we did. And if you have copper, which, by the way, we did, we have all of these minerals and all of this water that is generating. So there are things that you can't see in the ground itself that if you're smart and you're, some kind of a scientist kind of person, I can't do it, but you can back engineer that. And when you do, you're going to learn some pretty cool stuff. And that is the significance of my property. I don't know what they're doing down there, but I know what's going on with my property.
There you go. All right. Anybody else have anything for Martha this evening before we wrap it up? Okay. Martha, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. And we will keep you in our prayers. I do hope that you are able to achieve justice and that your family's property is returned to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you guys. If you guys are not following Martha, she's a great follow. She's a hoot. She is not quite as salty as I am, but she is definitely salty. And so if you guys are not following her, please go follow her. I love her to death. And her family is just an amazing patriotic family that deserves all of our prayers. I honestly hope that the organization that Carrie is going to forward to you is able in some way. And please just, obviously, we communicate often here on X. Keep us up to date on anything and everything, and we'll obviously have you back anytime that you want to come back. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You're
Everybody
welcome.
have a good day. Never, ever give up.
There you go. And you guys have a nice weekend. Obviously, I'll be on and off of here throughout the weekend. I've got another segment ready to go on our Warburg series. So thanks, guys. We will talk to you soon. All right. Let me get back over here. To oh, it did it to me again. It always ends up moving the one that has the camera on, and I can't ever find it. There we go. All right. So what else we have over here? Donnie Vision. Hi, Catherine. We need to be able to link the woo with what we know. I think doing that would do a lot. The Russians built the pyramids to study energetic properties. Look it up. All right. Mager Sarge. I shoot off my porch. Yeah, we can do that at my sister's house, not my house. I mean, we can actually shoot our guns. I live in the county, but I just don't do it off my porch. Dad lived north of Reno. Women couldn't get pregnant. They determined that the pee from the pill had leached into the septic in the aquifer. Oh my gosh, that's awful. Yeah, this guy right here, his dad was the last active duty. Their last name was Reed, R-E-E-D. He was the last active duty wing commander of Stead Air Base there. And when he retired, that's where he graduated from high school. Because when he got off active duty, his dad just stayed in the Reno area. And when he retired, I was stationed with him at the Pentagon and in San Antonio. Him and his wife went there and built up on where they did the air races in that canyon. He was up on just north of the third, whatever you call it, the third turn. So if you were out on he built a house and it had a wraparound veranda porch. If you were out on his porch, you could see the air races right down below you. It was so awesome. And I went out there the year after they got it built to visit with them. It's just a beautiful, beautiful house. But anyway, Reno is a beautiful area. Just too cold for me. Okay, thanks guys for being here. We will see you soon. Have a nice weekend.